Let me give you a summary of every single tech reviewer right now. New iPads, better screen, M4 chip. What is the point of iPad? Just put macOS on it already, or just buy a MacBook Air. Good, I've saved you so much time. I'm here to compare the brand new M4 iPad Pro to the previous gen M2 iPad Pro, because as negative as every tech review has been seemingly as of late, I think the M4 iPad Pro is something special and the one you should upgrade to. Let's start with the physical changes. Physically, the M4 iPad Pro is thinner, coming in at 5.3mm versus the 5.9 of the M2. While you probably won't notice a huge difference just by holding the device, I notice it because my iPad basically lives in the keyboard, and when the keyboard is closed, it is definitely thinner, about the thickness of the top portion of the old iPad keyboard. This makes a difference while holding it or sliding it into the tablet or laptop compartment of a relatively full backpack. The screen is noticeably better. To the average person, they might not see an instant difference between the two, but to me, things look noticeably sharper, more contrasty, and more color accurate. With the new tandem OLED Ultra Retina XDR display, the specs of the screen of the M4 iPad Pro are actually insane. It is now technically superior to the Pro XDR display, which, as outrageous as that initial $5,000 price point sounded, compared to professional colorist monitors, it was a fraction of the cost. And now you have something even better than that at a fraction of the cost in this new iPad Pro, and it is gorgeous. The old M2 iPad Pro had a brightness of 600 nits, whereas the new M4 iPad Pro has a sustained brightness of 1000 nits and a peak brightness of 1600 nits. This is better display technology than super high-end monitors and TVs, all while being a touchscreen with a 120Hz refresh rate as well. The contrast ratio is now double that of the M2 iPad Pro, which was 1 million to 1. The new M4 iPad Pro has a contrast ratio of 2 million to 1. Because it's OLED, blacks are actually black. No more ghosting or washed out blacks. The blacks are actually black because the individual LEDs are off. Content looks rich and gorgeous. The speakers on the new M4 iPad Pro are actually worse than the M2 iPad Pro because of that thinner body. Take a listen for yourself. The new M4 iPad Pro has reference mode, so even though you're getting one of the best displays on the planet built in, you can now turn this on and dial in even finer parameters to use this as a professional monitor for color critical work. Previously, this was only an option on the M1 and M2 13-inch iPad Pros, never available on the 11-inch. Now it is. The colors on the new OLED screen render very differently compared to the IPS panel of the M2. If you look at my wallpaper, you can see how the same photo looks different on each screen. And take my word, the difference is even more striking in person. The front-facing camera has now been moved to landscape orientation, which is so much better. When I look at my iPad for Face ID unlock, I don't have to look at the side, and it feels like it works more frequently, and I'm having to type in my password less often. And for actual camera use, it is so much more of a natural angle. Look at the difference between these two shots. Let's talk about chip performance, the thing that every tech reviewer seems to have a big gripe with. After running Geekbench, my iPad Pro scored 2,591 in single core and 10,022 in multi-core, whereas the M4 scored 3,770 in single core, which makes it the highest scoring consumer available chip on the planet, and scored a whopping 14,814 in multi-core. That is a pretty big gap between the two, especially for year-on-year improvement. Moving on to GPU, and the M2 scored 46,592, whereas the M4 scored 53,633, which is a more modest 15% increase year on year versus the almost 50% increase on the CPU side of things. Now you might be saying, benchmarks aren't everything. That doesn't show any real world use case improvement. Au contraire. What is one of the most intense things to do on any device? Gaming. I played Genshin Impact on both devices, one of the most demanding games available right now, and the M4 didn't dip in performance. The M2 iPad Pro always dips in performance between the 5 and 10 minute mark, dropping significantly in frame rate and in brightness due to overheating and the device not being able to keep up. While gaming on the M4, I kept waiting for this to happen, and it just didn't. There was never a brightness drop, the frame rate stayed constant, and I was roaming around for a while. The M2 iPad Pro is hot to the touch, and I've gotten many warnings over my use saying iPad cannot charge, it must cool down. The M4 iPad Pro wasn't even warm, even in the keyboard case. Whatever Apple has done to minimize overheating and keep the device cool has worked wonders. Another really demanding real-world test is video exports. This test also favors the M4 iPad Pro. I exported this 4K clip shot on my Sony a7S III in H.265 with a color grade on both devices, and the M4 exported it faster than the M2. It's not a huge difference, but it's better. And then there are the accessories. I'm not a huge Apple Pencil user, and I know this was a really big upgrade for people who are, but what I am is a big keyboard user, and my god, I don't think people are talking about this enough. This new metal chassis feels so great and sturdy, the keys feel way better to type on, the backlight is better, the overall typing experience feels less like an iPad keyboard and more like a proper laptop or desktop keyboard. When I go back to type on the old keyboard, it just feels worse and cheap in comparison. On top of the much improved typing experience, there's a new function key row, which mimics that of a MacBook. And I think the keys I'm most excited about are the volume and screen brightness keys. I'm going to be using those all the time. The trackpad is now bigger width-wise, but stays the same length. The big update to this trackpad is that it's no longer a dive board, but a haptic trackpad, much like every MacBook. That means you can click anywhere on the trackpad instead of just at the very bottom. This also feels significantly better and more premium. The hinge feels even better, and because of the redesigned keyboard, the iPad now sits closer to the back instead of floating above your keys, and it allows for more viewing angles that go back further than before. The side charging port has also been improved, being able to take a higher wattage than before, which means there's less of a disparity between charging via the keyboard or the iPad itself. You'll be able to charge faster and more reliably while keeping that side USB-C port open. The overall setup with the keyboard also feels significantly lighter than the old M2 setup. This is a significant upgrade over the previous generation, which in and of itself is very impressive, but this feels like a big step forward for the iPad. The fact that Apple touted the AI capabilities of this chip while drawing near to an agreement with OpenAI for future OS integration, all while skipping the M3 chip and going directly to M4, which is going to be the entire rest of their product lineup for the rest of the year, indicates to me that this is something special and this is going to be the year of AI. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest leaps forward both for AI as well as just Apple in general across their entire device lineup. So the fact that the iPad Pro is the first device to get an M4 chip indicates to me that there will be a clear line in the sand of before and after M4, and that will be the deciding factor of what devices get certain updates, especially when it comes to AI. And I think that is a momentous occasion, and it is kind of reminiscent of the 2018 iPad Pro, where it was just a whole new line of products. I don't know what WWDC has in store for iPad this year, and as much as I'd like it, I'm not holding my breath for macOS to come to the iPad Pro, and neither should you. You shouldn't buy a device on the premise that something might happen in a future software update. However, very few people are updating iPads year on year, and if you're that person who's been holding out since the OG 2018 iPad Pro, and you've been waiting for a significant enough upgrade, I do think this is the one, and all signs are pointing towards a massive leap forward in computational AI on these devices. If you are thinking about upgrading to this M4 iPad Pro, or this is your first ever iPad and you've just been waiting for that next big thing, I do think that this is what you've been waiting for. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section down below. My name is Marc Steiner, and I'll see you next time.